up a seat at the bar to join us for another episode of McAnally's Pubcast, a podcast exploring the fun and fantastical mind of Jim Butcher's The Dresden Files series. Hosts Tansenn, Maggie, and me bring you another round of literary analysis on this immense, immersive, and colorful environment inhabited by Harry Dresden, the world's only licensed private investigator and professional wizard. Join an active and engaged community of new and die-hard dedicated fans focused on the fabulous themes, theories, characters, context, lore, and more. This is McAnally's Dresden Files Pubcast by Free Flow Rambling. Conjure by it at your own risk.
Welcome to the McAnally's Pubcast, brought to you by Free Flow Rambling. This is episode 8.19, What Unicorn?, where we are covering the novel Summer Night. My name is Tansenn, and I'm joined by Maggie.
Hello, hello.
And Jess.
November.
Thank you to our Patreon subscribers for your generous support. It's people like you who help us do what we do. If you're not yet a Patreon subscriber, sign up today and get a fuck ton of bonus content, kick-ass merch, behind-the-scenes outtakes, and more. Sign up today at patreon.com/freeflowrambling. Chapter 26. Dresden sprints to the summer and winter mothers. Mothers and him agree to go quid pro quo for answers to their questions. Dresden makes the connection that Aurora is responsible for the loss of the summer knight's mantle. Just when he attempts to leave, he is ambushed by Grum and Elaine.
So this is what I brought up last time about how, like, if all these other things, you've got, what does he say right here? He's got Heaven, Hell, Olympius, Elysium, Tartarus, Gehenna, you name it. It's all part of the Never Never, right?
Yeah.
So this is
Okay, but he does qualify it.
in theory.
Yeah, he does say, and before that, he's like, it's a shadow world, a magical realm, and its substance is as mutable as thought. It has a lot of names like the other side of the next world, and it contains within it just about any kind of spirit realm. Therefore, that does not negate what they were, right? Because that still allows them to build their own thing up there, because it didn't say it was in the Never Never, or it was a part of the Never Never, or that it has to be. He just says just about any spirit realm. So there you go. Maybe this.
Well, I think that the key part of what you just said there, though, is its substance is as mutable as thought, which basically just opens it up to everything you can think of, which there's no limits on it.
That too. So yes, it opens it up to any bit. Her point was that Leah said, this isn't the Never Never. And she's like, but everywhere is in the Never Never.
Yeah.
So I think this is maybe where they're talking about these other realms or anything in the spirit
I get
realm.
it's just like, it just seems insane to me that, like, the fairies can be like, whoa, Heaven, Hell, Elysium, sure, we got that, but like,
But this
our
place
super
is up-
special battleground, we're not putting it in your gross, disgusting Never Never.
We're going to shit elsewhere.
Our whole
Yeah,
entire
yeah, exactly.
realm is...
Not in our
Although-
backyard.
Well, but maybe that's a fair point. They're like, we're not going to blow up fucking fairy. That's like where our realms exist. We're going to make this completely outside thing that doesn't exist.
We're going to make this
until we make it
imaginary
exist.
place that's neither here nor there. but both.
Exactly. And then if we fuck shit up, maybe only Chicago suffers.
Right.
We're fine. I like it. So he gives us a little bit about blah, 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 what it is and how he's getting there. And it doesn't really have any weather, but it has its own weather. I'm like, okay, Dresden. But yes, finally, he does draw closer to the lights. And turns out to be a pair of lit windows in a cottage that stood by itself on a slight rise of the ground. So these got big stone obelisks the size of coffins. Some fallen, some cracked, some upright, scattered loose rings. There's more, the raven again, and all of this. And he gets like this crawly, shivery sensation as soon as he starts approaching.
You are heavily within fairy
You
land.
are heavily within fairyland. And he's like, I can just, start to feel it. Yes, so he gets to the cottage, starts getting the shiver. So he already figures he's deep in the heart of it just because of the sense. And then he gets all shivery sensation and flush crawly when he gets up to the door. And the door's got a heavy, weathered wood and a snowflake symbol on it. So he figures Mother Winter.
Right. There's like this sort of lovely juxtaposition because it's not only you've got that representation with the weathered wood, like in the then there's the snowflake, as you were saying, but there's also this mildew and fresh baked bread smell. So it does represent both of them quite nicely.
But he doesn't twig to that right away. He just sees the snowflake and he's like, okay, so this must be Mother Winter's place or whatever, right? And, you know, again, if she's anything like Mab, she'd have the kind of power that would give any wizard the creeps. So, so this is what he says. He says kind of that aura that, because he does say that the mothers are like an order, that their power is like an order of magnitude above even that of the twins, the queens.
They are sisters.
And, and the queens just about fried his puny mortal brain looking at what they were getting up to. So now he's getting to the mothers. So he's like, yeah, even like through the door on the outside, I can like feel their pressure coming out, or their magical aura or whatever coming off, like body heat only, you know. I'm like, I'm way the fuck out here. I should
tangible presence.
Tangible presence, yeah. So already he's like, one wrong step. And what did Elaine say? You know, they could like annihilate you with their thoughts or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So, and on the head he goes and knocks, and gets the melodramatic.
Hammer Films, A Whisper of Rusty Hinges. I did look up Hammer Films Productions. It's a British film company that specializes in gothic horror and fantasy. You've probably heard of a few of them. Frankenstein, Dracula, The Mummy.
I have heard of a few of those. Yeah,
fair enough.
But yeah, that very classic, like...
Well, okay, so for me, I've never been able to picture this as anything other than like Hansel and Gretel. Like, I don't have a candy house, but I'm otherwise very Hansel and Gretel. Like, this is the old hey, come little children, like just climb into my oven, it'll all be fine.
I can totally see that now that you say that.
To a large degree, yes, that has always been my sort of, not so much with Mother Summer, but the Mother Winter one is definitely the more scarier old crone witch-like, right? Mother Summer to me is a bit more like your, you know, little plump grandma or whatever, like a Molly Weasley in grandma form or something. Or
I'm scared of them both.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, she can be, but again, she presents so much more normal and sweet and
that wholesome,
right? The baked bread and the whatever. Whereas, Granny is, and again, right, that very, very fairy tale little stone cottage with a thatched roof in the middle of a forest somewhere is, yes, aside from the candy, like you say, very kind of Hansel and Gretel or whatever villainy.
I like how it does go back and forth between that body warmth description, which is that sort of summer part, and then the inaccessibility of stone and wood, like the winter part, like, but both feeling that at the exact same time against each other, for each other.
Mildew and baked bread.
Yeah.
I know that Mom doesn't like, for most of the books, to be like, she's like, I never want to see this in a movie because they're going to ruin it if they try to ever like actually quantify a sound or an image or whatever.
Something.
Right, but for this one especially, like, I feel like this for me is like the most like movie scene when it's just like very much, it's like you're having a conversation with like Mother Summer and everything is just like a nice beautiful clean cottage, and then Mother Winter starts working and we're like the dark cavernous like shadows everywhere, and it's just like instantly like
almost spiders like, crawling on the walls.
Well, yeah, like when like characters go through like a roller coaster or something and the light is just going and you're just getting the flash of their bodies like back and forth. I like that's how I've always got it with Harry, just like summer winter, just like happy sad like dark light like just very much of this whole like almost like the what did you just have? The psyche trauma of like staring at the queens, right? Well, this is a different version of that, like assault your senses.
A little bit, yes. And I don't picture it quite the same.
Very disjointed.
I get, and that would be like cinematically, visually a very cool way of doing it with the cutting back and forth from scene to scene. I tend to almost picture it a little bit more like the way they're talking, almost like the two, because so he gets in, so he gets that, come in boy, we'll be expecting you, which is very much like, yes, come into my, you know. And he goes in and he sees Winter Furs on the side, and she's dark and she's covered up in blankets by like is it a cold fireplace? I can't remember if the blanket on the hearth above I can't remember if the fireplace is lit or not. But anyways,
it's decorated with teeth in varying stages of health, decay, and carnivorism.
Yeah, I like that, carnivorism.
But it doesn't really, I don't think it actually does say if it's lit or not, but she's
right. But again,
wrapped
this
up
is
in
cold, dark, shutters closed, right? And she's like, oh, interesting, can you feel it? And he's like, and then instantly you realize there's someone else there.
Right.
And to me, that sort of way, full race, she's in the I don't know, living room by the hearth, and whereas in any, kind of flips, like the door is kind of centered, so, and then on the other side is like this warm, homey kitchen where all of a sudden Mother Summer is there, baking and making tea.
Or does it change for whatever place in the room that they're moving to?
You guys ever watch anime when it's like everyone's just like chilling and then someone gets upset so they go to the corner and start growing mushrooms? It's like right now Summer's in control, so it's like this is a beautiful cottage except for Mother Winter's corner where she just slowly like withers and wilts everything within a 5-foot range. But everything outside of that 5-foot range is like, oh my god, it's summertime, guys. We're having fun.
Right? Yeah. Something more like that.
I have a question. Okay, so it says he stepped across the threshold into the dim cottage. Now, do fairy mothers...
Monsters don't get thresholds.
Okay, so no technical threshold in this case. It's just...
No.
He's just saying that as an entryway.
Yeah, just the threshold of the door, yes. But she did also invite him in.
But I think it's a little bit just in that kind of a human way. He is aware of the fact that, he's been invited in and he is entering, right?
Yes.
They don't have a magical...
psychic threshold.
Yeah, like they don't have a defense that way.
A defense,
right? There isn't a consequence to it, but just, in and of itself, it's something to be aware of.
Well, I was going to say, you're still
Right.
entering the spider's web or whatever,
right.
right? So, and because again, like with Aurora and stuff like that, he's like, Talos specifically invited him in and said, I grant you, however he phrased it, he's like, I give you guest status under the treaties, right? And Aurora's like, I will offer you food, and don't worry, it's just mortal food, it's not... so I think that way kind of a thing. It's still, but again,
Just a little bit more acknowledgement.
Kind of an etiquette in a way.
Yeah, you have been invited in here. You aren't breaking an entry.
Yeah, so it probably gives him a little bit more of that guest right and kind of a thing. But yes, he does say that, and essentially he's like, monsters don't get thresholds. So that's a nice thing. It's like, you can't come into my house, but fuck out, we can walk into yours anytime we want, bitch.
But do we really want to?
Might not really want to, but we can.
They don't need the threshold because of that.
Well,
Yeah,
the trade-off is guest rights, right? Immortals can't really offer guest rights the same way, right?
Or would
monsters, you
respect
get a
it.
threshold.
They'd just be like, yeah, whatever. You have guest rights. Just kidding.
No, mortals totally can. What do you mean?
Well, no, mortals, like, they can't,
They're not bound to it.
like, regular Joe Schmo doesn't have that, like, doesn't know about it, right? Doesn't
Oh,
know the
like
defense.
you to me?
Yeah, like if I was just a regular person to, a vampire, right? I wouldn't know to be going after those, right? But at least I've got a threshold, right?
Okay, yeah.
Magical mortal, sure, but I mean, like, the
Okay,
regular...
I thought you meant that, like, I'm like, yeah.
yeah, I know, I could see it in your eye. You were ready to tear me the fuck down.
No, not quite.
Listen here, idiot. Fuck you.
I mean, not quite, but
I could see it in your eye. You were building up. Explain what you meant by that, moron. I can...
Well then, speak
So-
more clearly.
So I really like how the mothers speak. They speak very much in riddles. They're like the Nostradamus of Chicago Wizarding World. You can
Right.
really just read whatever you want into what they say.
I was
It's
gonna
just
say,
like,
you thought like Mab and Maeve and them were all bad, right?
Just
Well, no, she kind of danced
batshit
around
weird.
it, but
yeah.
yeah. The mothers are 10. Although I love how it's like,
They are directing the conversation, but you really can't tell how.
well, yeah, right. So, Winter's all like, can you feel it? And then all of a sudden Mother's like, because Harry's like, feel what the fuck? And then all of a sudden Mother's like, yeah, sure, wow, it's poor child, he's walked a thorny path, like, stick out your tongue. Yeah, what?
Just a random what? Okay.
And she's like, stick out your tongue, come on. And then she's like, yeah, basically it's like reading tea leaves or something, She's like gaining all this insight or whatever about
it
looking
sort
at
of
his
reminds me a
tonsils.
little bit of like the old couple in Princess Bride.
Miracle Max and his
Yes.
wife. I'm not a witch, I'm your wife. But right now I'm not even sure I want to be that anymore.
Because they have a little bit of that back and forth too.
Yes.
And
The
this
odd
really
couple,
weird.
kinda.
You can see
That's
it
like
now,
the
right?
funniest
Cranky
allegory illusion. Old batshit couple.
It's like Carol Kane and Billy Crystal right here.
They were great.
Which one's which?
That's how I want to see these two.
Right? Billy Crystal, will you please come play Mother Winter? he's almost as old now.
Oh God!
Just kidding, love you, Billy Crystal. You're funny. Yeah, he's getting up there too now. So yes, they are quite this, and especially right, like Mother Winter is such the old cranky, and Summer is all like, no, like this sucks, this is horrible, everything's gonna, well, no, dear, it's not that bad. Yes, it is.
But I do like when every time like Mother Summer tries to go off on a rant, Mother Winter's like, shut up, don't get her started, she'll never go on. I'm like, yeah, that's my more version of an old lady. Like,
Right.
Be quiet, we don't want to hear you.
Yeah,
Nice.
done.
Good.
I'm so over all of this.
Yeah. So this is the weirdest, like, crazy fae. They're
Conversation,
bullshit.
interview.
Yeah. It's just
It's
always
really
bullshit.
interesting. I liked it a
They
lot.
have some points. Like summer starts sweeping and winter's like, it's just gonna come back anyways. I'm like, I feel you, winter. It's
the
like that
principle
old
of the
Joan
thing.
Rivers thing. It's like, it's like you dust, you change the sheets, you wash the dishes. 6 months later, you have to do it all over again.
They're
you,
such
Joe.
a nice balance to each other, though. Like, because there's like summer's hopefulness and winter's pessimism. It's just
Yeah.
kind of cancels
Well,
each other out. Like,
Exactly, right? Like we
I
just
mean,
talked,
it's,
we talked about Mab and Titania
ding,
being
ding,
a
ding.
perfect balance, and you've got exactly Mother
It's
and Winter
well
are
done.
still maintaining that perfect balance. Exactly.
It is well done, yeah.
It's just, got a touch of the old couple thrown in, which just makes it funny. Titania and Mab are too busy being like serious and running the world.
They're still like it's almost like in real life, though. It's like you've got the femme fatale, and then you've got like the older. It's like, I don't care anymore. I'll say whatever the fuck I want.
yeah.
There's no one to impress or intimidate now.
Right? Exactly. I don't give a fuck. So Harry is totally off his like, okay, sure, I don't know. And basically they're like, okay, so you want answers? And he's like, yes. And they're like, well, how do you expect to get them when you don't even know what questions to ask? And he's like, what do you mean I don't know? Like, I know what questions I want to ask. And they're like, yeah.
this is like Alice in Wonderland and the caterpillar.
Yeah,
Totally.
Right.
Which I hate. I hate Alice in Wonderland. I hate the Cheshire Cat. I don't like any of it. So this whole conversation for me is just like, Jesus Christ.
This is funny. I'm learning so much about her in these moments. I was like, it makes sense, but at the same time,
I hate Alice in Wonderland.
no,
Well, that moment is
the
pretty frustrating.
original,
It's
the
like,
cartoon, the just any incarnation of it.
I don't like the story.
Just the okay. Interesting.
It's very disjointed.
Very boring.
Okay, fair enough.
So Summer agrees to answer questions in exchange for answers to their questions. So it was like a bit of a barter thing going on.
And again, you'd think he would get this. The whole, exchange of he knows he can't get shit for free. He knows they're gonna, so they're like, we're gonna ask you questions. She's like, I really don't have time. I didn't come here to get asked questions.
That's the foundation of the Fae. Like,
I was
quid
gonna
pro
say,
quo.
What else are you? I'm like, really? This seems like not a bad price to, like, compared to the ones you've got from Maeve and Mab and Leah in the past. Really, this is like, oh, I didn't answer some of your questions. Okay, like again, they're not asking for a hand or an eyeball or already you're way better off. And I'm like, you're already going through all this like chit chat and they're back and forth. I'm like, at this point,
That's a pretty easy thing to give. Like, just do it.
I get you're running out of time, but it hasn't been that long since you deemed there was another 15 hours. You lost maybe a couple hours or something. Like, I don't really know. Yesterday in the Never, who knows?
I was gonna say,
But there's that. But, at the same time, right? It's just like, again, I'm like, this is the, like, you fucking didn't want to listen to Mab until Mab was just like, why don't you just listen to me? And then he's like, oh, fine, I'll listen to you. And I'm like, you didn't want to listen to Maeve. And Maeve was like, just listen to me. What can it hurt? And he's like, fine, I'll listen to you. And Aurora's like, he's like, I don't have time for this. Fix Elaine, and I gotta save the world. And she's like, well, just listen to me. And he's like, okay, fine, I'll listen. And I'm like, now you get to the mothers who like actually might have information that you're actually hoping will answer, and you're just like, I don't have time for this shit.
He is just as consistent.
It's like, really, Harry? I'm like, okay.
I'm here to solve crimes, not talk to people.
Yeah, right.
Talking about instant gratification. I want it now.
It's like, I'm just here for the facts. I don't care about the truth, or, whichever thing.
I'm here for the truth. I don't care about the facts.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So their first question that they ask, and
Actually,
they both
before
ask
we get to
Santana.
that,
Oh, yeah, sure.
the part that I do actually like about them is being like, you don't even know what you're here to ask for. You don't even know what the fuck you want, which is like, actually, I do think is fair. Because this whole time he's just been like, da 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 da.
I know. She's like, you want answers? And he's like, how can you expect to get them when you don't even know what to ask? And he's like, what the fuck?
Yeah. And then it'll come up after they ask their own questions. But yeah, they're like, so what's your question? And he asks, and he's like, that's not your question, idiot. Like, fuck, okay, I'm sorry. I didn't know it was going to be a test.
I know, right? It's like, at least you get a chance, It's like, is that
Right.
Is that your final answer? Is that your final
But
question?
to be fair to the mothers, if he'd asked the right questions to Aurora, Maeve, And the mothers, maybe he wouldn't be in this problem to begin with.
The queens, yeah. Well,
He
I
really
mean,
skipped
he
out
did,
of the
he,
queens,
did, he
but-
did with Maeve. I mean, you can't get much more straight up than did you kill them? And again,
But even
if
then,
you're
he didn't
trusting
have to ask her. Just witnessing her being insane was like, yeah, you wouldn't have done this.
Well, yeah, okay, fine, that's true.
But yes,
But he didn't
anyways.
ask the right question. He just didn't bother to wait for an answer in that case.
Could have asked a different question, though, and have learned even more about something else.
Yeah.
Point is,
but
okay, continue.
fair.
So they do ask their first question, and in tandem, as creepy as that would be,
Twins.
Right.
which is more important, the body or the soul? And Dresden really gives this sort of politician's anscer, if anything.
Yes and no,
like, and
yeah.
it's an answer that sort of appeases everybody.
Yeah.
In a way, he says that if I were sick and old and dying, I believe that the soul is more important. And if I were a man about to be burned at the stake in order to preserve his soul, I would believe that the body is more important. And the mothers seem to sort of approve.
Yeah.
And they want to know why.
I'm with you, though, on the politician answer. Like,
It's not
the
really
mothers
an
are just
answer.
like, you're so smart for saying that. I'm like, no, you're not. Pick a side, idiot.
Well, and it's almost I think they relate to it as it being fairies, because fairies never want to answer anything.
Yeah, they don't
either.
use a
That's
straight
fair.
up answer either, right? It's all depend. And I mean, like, it's fair because exactly, right? Like, as he says, he's like, well, it depends on who's asking the question. And it's, kind of a turn of phrase like I use a lot, like, well, it would depend on, and they're like, well, we're asking and we're asking you.
Right.
Like, okay,
Well, and I was
fair.
trying to
So-
wonder why this line of questioning.
Yeah.
And I've got a little bit of a theory, and I think it sort of emphasizes the sense of duality that's presented in this chapter, because there's a lot of one side, the other, like, and
Talking heads.
yeah.
Yeah, and also,
And then there's no actual black and white, because they have to coexist.
and there's not actually, like you say, two sides of the same coin
Right.
or whatever. There's not just a one or the other, or
There's no right or wrong between
Yeah.
the mothers, and the mothers definitely have this concept down,
Yeah, at
because
least they understand it
they've
at this
been through
point.
all of this bullshit. It's less of, they're not fighting that daily war that the
Yeah.
queens are. They've done it. They've been there, and they've moved on.
it's like when you're growing up and you think your parents are so full of shit, and then you have your own kids and they think they know everything, and you're like, oh, really? You know everything? Okay, sure.
Yeah.
And then you still realize how much you don't know that your parents have continued learning onto them.
Well, and even like, back to that chessboard thing where it's like, even if you've got the
Yeah.
queens and they can move wherever the hell they want and they're the most protected piece and blah, blah, blah. Whereas the mothers seem to almost be like the pieces are moved and they're just off to the sidelines now. Like, that we've played the game and we get it now. Like,
Right.
like there is no
They're the
do or
masters
die.
that teach how to play chess.
We don't have the
Exactly,
stakes
right?
or whatever.
Yeah,
Exactly.
they're just like, they're
It's
fully
just
removed
like-
from the game now and just witnessing this. And even to a
Right.
point, like, we don't get the same sense that they hoard their power or goad it, or even like, they're not threatening mass death on the entire world with the amount of power they have. They're
Right.
both just
They
like,
just
we don't play this game.
are
We're
what they
just-
are now.
Right, and they're definitely polarized sides of the coin. Like, they are definitely opposites, but they recognize that difference is just different. It's not wrong.
Yeah.
It's not one or the other.
Thank you.
Well, it's much. It's much past the enemy of thy enemy is my friend. Whereas they're both just like, at this point, they're just like, all right, complete equals now. There is no.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, they live in harmony together because
Exactly.
that's what they do. Yeah.
And yeah, it's because I was kind of liked it because I was like, well, exactly, like that's the way I would feel too. Like, well, yeah, if you're in this situation, then this is going to matter more. If you're in this situation, then this is going to matter more.
Oh, very Hamilton though. Like, if you don't pick a side, then what the fuck are you fighting for, right? So it's like very much Harry, like, who's
Yeah.
always very much like, this is my position. This is who the fuck I am. Right or wrong, I'm going to
If
war
you
for this
stand
guy,
for
right?
nothing, what do you fall for?
Exactly. So it's very much this
Yeah.
moment where he's just like, I don't know, for this or this, and I'm just like, what the fuck? Who are you?
But at the same time, so there is very much.
I
that.
get
And there
the
is-
knowledge of it.
There
but
is very much his size is like, well, that's a very fair point because you're right. If you're like, you're at the end of, I don't give a shit anymore. I'm done. I'm over. I'm ready to die. No problem.
Been there, done that.
Take my
It's all
soul.
good.
You can, right? But exactly, if you're literally about to be, martyred for your, you're like, well, I really kind of don't really want to die. Like, my body right now is definitely, right? So it's like part of me kind of like, I don't know that they let him because usually it's like witches, you have to pick one or the other, and he really doesn't. But at the same time, I'm like, well, they gave him that option because he's like, well, it depends who you ask, right? Because obviously if you ask this person, it's going to be this. And they're like, well, we're asking you. So he's like, okay, well, my answer is this.
Right, and he
I'm
gets
picking
to
both
it.
sides.
Why it's important to them. This child sees what she does not. It is not in her nature. She is what she is. So, and Dresden questions if this is Maeve, but I really think it's Mab. Yeah, absolutely. And why? why wouldn't Mab choose somebody that has like an advantage over her view? Like she's really smart and powerful, but she is limited by her station, where she's at in life right now. She doesn't have the same experience that the mothers do.
Yeah.
And she's sort of forced into this back and forth battle. And I think she recognizes that Dresden can see beyond that, and the mothers at this point in time see that he can as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess.
I'm good with that, other than the fact that I've read the book and I know who they're talking about.
Yeah.
I agree with 90% of it, just not the person you think it is.
Ah.
Everything else I agree, yes.
Yeah, because in your... But, I mean, yeah, it does have a certain... Like you say, like, they are... For all the power and whatever that she have, like you say, there are certain rules that they have to follow and some things that they...
Well, you finished it now, too, so you remember everything.
I do, yes.
You just read it.
Did I not really...
You read it, like, yesterday.
Yes. Okay, but the whole free will...
My last 2 chapters was this morning.
Yeah.
But exactly, the free will. This is the thing that the monsters and the fairies and the whatever, right? So exactly, like, much as they can pick and choose and manipulate things, there is always a certain sort of boundaries or whatever that they have to work within, right? That he doesn't. But I mean, I do just in the immediacy of it too. And they're like, why'd you give that answer? And he's like, because it's a stupid question.
Which is really the part that is much more hairy and satisfies me a lot more. It is a very stupid question.
Yeah.
Like, that's why I hate Alice in Wonderland, Cheshire Cat, whatever. It's very stupid. Like, who cares?
I guess. But yeah, but basically, you know, he's like, it's not as simple. And she's like, precisely, right? So that is the whole... and so yeah, so this is what he's exactly, they're like, it's not her nature, it's strange times. And he's like, aha, you're talking about Maeve, aren't you? And like Winter just laughs at him. You know? She's kind of a quiet wheezing or whatever, but he's like, okay, he's like, well, I answered your question, so he's like, you have to answer mine now, right? And they're like, Patience, you still haven't figured out what you want to ask. It's like,
I like that the fairies can't lie, but they can technically by omission.
just obfuscate out
Just
the
don't answer.
arse,
Yeah.
like,
Just don't answer.
yeah, exactly.
You can't make them answer. It's just if they do answer, then it has to be true.
Then it
They
has
just
to
don't
be
say anything.
some form or another, yeah, exactly.
But that's why typically you get Harry saying it 3 times, because they try not to. But once it's been 3 times, then they are much more compelled to be like...
And then verbal diarrhea. But
the actual
They gotta speak.
specifics, yeah.
But yeah, it's not very smart to be pissing off mothers. So.
no.
Yeah, no. And they're really taking, right, because it's like, she takes her bread out of the oven, now she's pouring tea and making, and he's like, oh my god, like, let's get on with this. Like,
Every conversation with Grandma ever.
Like, I have so much to do.
He's running on a different pace entirely.
Right, and he's like, okay, patience expired. He's like, I gotta solve this shit now.
Like, really side note, but my grandmother, her sister looks so much like her, but I never knew her sister growing up. And so, like, one of the first times I ever stayed at my grandma's house when her sister was there, her sister was the one in the living room, and I came downstairs and started talking to her, thinking I was talking to my grandma. And I was like, this is the weirdest conversation, because, like, they're very polar opposites. My grandma's, like, not religious at all, doesn't care about God, is very mean and brash, and, like, whatever,
Abrupt
like,
and
go fight for
brusque
yourself. But her sister is very much like, we go to church, and we pray, and we do this, and we take care of everyone. And so I was having the weirdest conversation of my life with this very nice version of my grandmother.
Did I wake up? Is this a dream? And I'm in the Twilight Zone?
And yeah, you're just like, when is this conversation gonna end?
Grandma,
Like, this
did
is
you have
weird.
a stroke? Like, should I be calling it?
I was like, I gotta go. This is weird. And then you stand up, and it's like, oh, there's Grandma.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what you also get for having the
Really
version
Twilight
to call anybody by their, like, same thing. Like, okay, so when I was a kid, my parents were very much about you call all adults Mr. and Mrs. and whatever, right? And I once had, like, my best friend's mom was like, you can just call us, but I'm like, no, I can't, right? So when my kids were, it was exactly, it's like, everybody just automatically introduced you by your first name, and so even all the kids, and I'm like, for the most part, I didn't really mind, like, for their actual friends, I'm like, you know what, there was something that always felt a little weird about being called Mrs. or something like that, too, right? But then Jessica fell into, like, this sort of, like, in between, where she just wasn't comfortable with either. She's like, it's weird to call you Mr. and Mrs., but I can't call you by your first name. So she just literally was like, oh, so hey, you, can, like, anything she could possibly do to avoid ever saying it. So I'm like, this is
I
the only
actually do
reason
the
you got
exact
through that
same thing. I
conversation.
totally do. I
'Cause
can't stand it.
If at any point you'd said grandma, she would have been like, I'm not grandma, but because you just, it's like an ingrained automatic thing to just not use a name unless you really, really, really,
Here's
really
the thing.
had to.
I wasn't ever listening, so I never learned anyone's name, so I couldn't call them by their name.
That's not true, because we had this specific conversation about our Dresden double, because his kids called me by they called me Maggie all the time and blah, 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 and you were like talking, you're like, yeah, I can't. I just generally will do everything I can. I will like wait until I have like eye contact so they know I'm talking because I can't just call out.
you.
Yeah, because she's like, I can't do that because he wouldn't have responded to that. He didn't really like that. So she's like,
As
I
an
literally have to
adult,
wait until he looks at me so I
As
can.
an adult, I feel very comfortable calling people by their name. I just want to put that out there.
Yes, but it was just funny that, even though these were like our neighbors and our kids were best friends and we saw each other like literally we walk into each other's houses all the time.
That's really funny.
But she could not use any sort of,
I get that.
yeah.
I totally
it's
get
just
that.
funny.
He'll look at me one day.
So it's like eventually he'll look at me. People ask my question. I'll have wet the couch by then and won't know where the bathroom is, but eventually he'll look at me. Well, yes, that's hilarious. And it's like if you just said like, hey auntie or hey grandma, it would have solved it right there.
Nope.
So Dresden moves on in his impatience. Tonight is midsummer. Tonight the balance begins to tilt back to winter, and Maeve is going to try to use the stone tablet to steal the summer knight's mantle for keeps. Interestingly, the mothers agree-ish. So tick 1 in the box for Maeve being up to something.
Or there's someone. I like this too, because they're like, okay, you're on the right track. You can more clever think this. So he starts thinking it out. And then Winter's like, yeah, keep going. He's like, oh shit. He's like, you heard me thinking that? He's like, creepy. So like, okay, well, I guess I might as well do it out loud.
A little glimmer of what the power they have is.
Just how much.
Just read your mind.
Yeah, it's like, just, it's just out there plain as day.
This is why they
He's
definitely
like,
know which questions he doesn't know what to ask.
I guess this is,
There's not a thought in your head,
this
sweetie.
is how we know you don't ask because we can see what you're going to ask. And, darling, you are so world. Yeah. So he starts. So narrowing it down. So what is it? So they're like the whole everything is something. Whether it's stuff just left, whether it's food or riches or beauty or whatever. So he kind of figures out. He's like, okay, the only thing that could really be important to them at this point is power. So, again, and it makes, like, I love how you throw something, the real world, whatever, right? And he's like, because again, you're like, well, things can be destroyed or whatever, right? So I'm like, yeah, sure, you can steal something and wreck it and not. But, again, because they are specifically, they've already sort of acknowledged that power is what you're talking about. And they're like, no, you can't destroy power. And your own mage, already says that, so exactly, right?
Sage.
It's like, sage. Says that it can't be created or destroyed or whatever, right? So it's like, oh, good point, right? So again, it's just a nice way of flipping that onto the yes, maybe, but change. This is something that's still there, but why can't? Where is it gone? What's happened to it, right? And him finally cluing in that there is another night, they just can't act or be accessible, or it's something
hidden.
that's locked and bound and right.
This is where they point out Einstein, I think, right?
That's what I say. Yeah, this is the sage. Yeah, they're like your own sage says
Right,
you can't.
yes. Okay,
be
because I did look at that, because Einstein has 3 theories. Objects in motion or at rest remain in the same state unless an external force is imposed on them.
The body at rest
is
stays at rest.
inertia.
The body in motion stays in motion.
Yeah, the force acting on an object is equal to the mass of the object multiplied by its acceleration, and for every action there is an equal and opposite reaction.
Yeah.
So
That's Newton.
that's the 3 theories that he's got.
No, that was
Newton is gravity.
Equal and opposite reaction. I thought that was him.
No, I don't think so. I think that is.
But
Newton is like thermodynamics or something too, isn't he? Plus like the laws of conservation of gravity or
look that
something.
up,
I don't know. I don't know my. Yeah, I know Newton got an apple dropped on his head, and Einstein stuck his tongue out at the press. So.
Yeah. But I mean,
Yeah,
like, if
that's the
like,
two
looking
ways
at
to
those-
tell them apart.
But if you're looking at those 3 concepts, the Summer Knight's mantle cannot be destroyed because there's no equal force to be able to impose that kind of change that way.
Newton's 3rd law. For every action in nature, there's an equal and opposite reaction.
Okay, there you go.
I guess they just both said it. Fucking scientists.
Maybe he
It's like in share theories.
expanded on it.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know enough.
Okay,
about
well,
it.
I'm also right is the only thing I care about.
Yeah, I was like,
I was also okay.
Newton
Yes.
has gravity, and Einstein is E equals MC squared. It's like that's all. Theory of relativity. That's all I can, concretely say. That he hated math and like flunked it as a kid. So
Sure.
yeah, Einstein did, and then he went on to become a whole.
Going back just a tiny little bit, I did like that when Dresden asked the mothers who killed the Summer Night, they were like, they basically think he's dumb for it. Like, why would you ask this? This is a dumb question.
Who cares?
Right?
Old question.
And it sort of shows this maturity and difference between the others that Dresden has asked this question to. The mothers instead, they call him on that he's more clever than that, and they push him to examine why and how, which is really reflecting the exact same thing that Murphy asked
said.
him.
Yes, figure out the why and the
Yeah.
how, and that will give you a better idea.
This is more important, not where you're going.
Totally fair. it could, like, anyone could have hired to be done it, right? And, like, we kind of had the conversation where it's like, well, it was, like, clearly could have only been committed by, like, a queen or a leader or a mother or a knight based off of, like, just, like, how clean it was and blah, blah, blah. But really, like, at any point, yeah, like, anyone could have passed the buck, really.
Well, I mean, and Dresden says that, too, right? Because when he's talking to Bob, he's like, could a wizard have done it? And he's like, well, yes. But, you know, it still would have taken a lot of trouble. And, you know, and basically Dresden's like, okay, that's way too many in the suspect pool. I can't include, like, every wizard in the world, so let's just assume it's internal fairy crap, because that makes the most sense right now, right? He's like, I can't. So, I mean, really, yeah, like you say, it could be, but he's basically narrowed it down partly just out of feasibility. But, you know, it's like, if anybody could have done it and everybody's a suspect, I ain't never going to figure this out, right? So, yeah, so he has already... You know,
answered that.
And yeah,
he's good with that.
He's good with that, but exactly, right? So this is, yeah, where he's like figured out that exactly, like, whoever it was that said it is, power can be neither, you know, created or destroyed, which is like the whole thing about, you know, like, lightning and electricity, and then, right, it's like you move it around, but it's not really, we don't create it, we have to harness it or get, you know, all that matter and energy is there, it's just what you turn it into, right? Whereas, you know, you turn friction into heat, or you turn... You know, you suck all the heat out and all these things automatically freeze, and, you know, like, even Harry sometimes does that in his spells, you know, he's like, sucks out all of the water and the thing, and all of a sudden this is, you know, there's nothing left but whatever, right? So, yeah, I like how it comes down to this whole sort of, again, this mix of science and magic, and so, like, magic can only do so much, but even then, you're not like, even, you know, he says in his cells, like, well, he doesn't create fire, it doesn't come out of nowhere. He's got to either give his energy into it to make it, or he's got to draw it out of the environment or his emotions or somebody else's emotions or whatever, right? It's like that energy is all there. You get what you've got. So again, I just like that there's this, you know, mixing of his worlds very much, because he does live in the reality of the existence of our universe, but he also has magic and stuff. So it's just a nice little blending.
We're big fans of physics, I guess.
Yeah, right? Like, it's just, right? It's like you can't have one without the other. They don't
Well, that's part of the lore of
exclude
the
each other.
world.
Yeah, that's what I mean, right? It's just, again, just him bringing that and reminding you that it all. So, yeah, so basically he's like, exactly, it's still got to be there somewhere. It's just now trapped and you can't use it. So then he finally figures out, and he's like, okay, so where does the power go? Or how does the power go? Or what is the... Right? And that's when it finally starts to click and make a little bit more sense, that it can only travel within its own realm. So, yeah, it returns to the nearest reflection of itself. So... Therefore, it would have been a lot harder for...
It can't just dissipate willy-nilly. Has to go somewhere.
Yeah.
Specific.
Finally, Dresden has his question.
Right, so the...
Well, yeah, that's what it was. How does the mantle pass on from one knight to the other?
So has his answer, sorry.
Right.
So, yeah, has his answer. So that's what he means, is when it passes back to the nearest reflection. So then he's like, well, Winter couldn't have done it because it's not winter power. It's summer power, which means... What the fuck? Somebody in summer has to be responsible, and that just doesn't make fucking sense.
And it can't be summer queen, that it can't be a queen, because otherwise the mothers would know where it was there.
Yeah.
Like, they would know, and they don't.
Yeah, well, also, I mean, yeah, it's like, they probably wouldn't tell me. Like, they wouldn't have led me to the answer if it was them. So that, right? And he's like, again, the queens didn't make sense also,
we
because
saw that whole
chessboard. Exactly. It's like, they wouldn't be moving against each other if one of them
had the upper hand already.
Yeah, Matt would be like, you go ahead, sweetheart, you try and take that table. You just, no problem. You know what I mean?
Or Summer wouldn't be as worried about
I don't fucking need to fight you, because I'm gonna kick your ass. And I'm right, exactly, right? So
one just thinks they're calling the other's bluff.
Yeah, you say they're just checking each other's advance, kind of a thing, exactly. So then he's like, okay, so he's like, great, stop him. And they're like, oh, yeah, we can't. Just like Leah couldn't bring you here, but Elaine could. It's like, we're enough out of the game that exactly, it's like, we can't interfere, we can't meddle anymore, we can't, you know. And I'm like, I get it. But at the same time, it's like, you know, it's like you can say, it's not like, again, you've got this vast power to manipulate the reality of the never, and you can, like, pull his thoughts right out of his head. And I'm like, you can't go, like, you know, send a page or something to Mab and be like, yeah, or Titania or what. And you know what I mean? It's like, really? I feel like you guys have some kind of, you know, Insta message that you could really just ding them or something. But no.
Right. So Dresden sort of goes on this different path of it. The power's gone into a knight, but then he's kind of like, that doesn't... He questions the imbalance of that situation, if it had done that.
Yeah, which is what's thrown the whole thing out of whack. Yeah. Is exactly that. it didn't bounce back where it was supposed to, and they don't have it, and everybody's running around like chickens with their heads cut off. So, yeah. So, again, he finally narrows it down so that if it wasn't Mab, and it wasn't the mom, well, fuck. Or Mab or Titania or whatever, then Aurora's the last logical conclusion.
Power has been changed in some way or trapped.
Yeah. So then they're all like, okay, well, we judge you're the one to figure all this out. And he's like, if you're strong enough, if you're brave enough. And Dresden's desperately going, I'm really not. Trust me. No, you guys, totally sounds like it's way more in your ballpark. You guys.
You got this far.
Yeah, he's like, can I just go, like, tell Mab and, like, whatever? And they're like, they're all busy preparing for war. They don't have time to see you now. And he's like, okay, so you tell them. And they're like, no, we can't. Not that simple. We have powers. But again, we're bound within our limits. We can no longer interfere because our time has passed.
Yeah. Can't involve themselves with queens or the ladies.
Exactly. It's like, we can crush them like a bug, but we're not allowed to anymore.
It was specifically said at the beginning of the book, though, the queen who was, is, and will be, right?
Yes.
So it is a little bit more to that point of, like, their time's done.
Yes, they don't get to be in charge.
They don't get to decide what happens
was now.
Yeah, exactly, right? It's Mab's the one in charge.
Has-beens.
Has-beens. Yeah, so he's like, well, what can you do? And someone's all like, nothing, which, again, I partially get, because someone, but I was like, well, you'd think, again, because it's within your court, that you're the only one that should be, but,
Right.
But yes, no, it's actually, even though they can't act directly or influence, but Winter has something that can counter, which I guess that makes sense with the whole balance we're talking about, I suppose.
It's just
Summer did something, Winter's got to undo it.
And yeah, like Winter says, like, one of my names, like, I am the Unraveler, I am the Unmaker.
Yeah, the Destroyer, the Unmaker. Yeah. And again, this is because we've kind of forgot about this other thing, the whole thing that, much as we're joking about Dresden and his haircut, but we forget that the whole reason he was in this position and this desperate man at the beginning of the book is he's been trying to figure out a way to save Susan or make something better with Susan or do...
That's his whole life goal
his
right
whole
now.
life goal, to the point of exactly his life, his business, his everything is in the toilet. And she just, knits up this little thing, and he's like, I forgot to tie it off. And she's like, it's not supposed to be. The whole point is that it needs to be unraveled. And he's like, what? And he's like, so wait, you're telling me that this can do anything? Any enchantment, any spell, anything can be undone? And she's like, yep.
This is his golden ticket.
And he's like, oh, man. He's like, is it a gift? And they're like, not really, but, it's yours now. You do whatever you think is right, whatever you want to do, and it's just like,
a gift, but not a gift, but a necessity.
Yeah, because he's like, any enchantment? Any? And they're like, any? And he's like, I could use this? And they're like, you could, Emissary. Oh, fuck. It's just like business related, because I'd really much rather use it for my own purposes. Right. But yes.
Yeah, and then they sort of basically say that they're unable to help any further after handing off the unraveling.
Which, to be fair, they've done more than anyone else in the entire book.
Which, yeah, they answered some questions,
get.
And they actually gave him something to do something with. So, yeah.
And not a bad price to pay is just answers.
Really, exactly. Of everything he'll pay for every book from now on.
I was going to say, of every encounter he's ever had.
The cheapest bargain he's ever made. Or will.
And yeah, cut the most out of it, so...
They give him the blessings, and Dresden apologizes for any harm to their unicorn. What? Unicorn. What?
This absolute best, like, the little grin, like... White unicorn.
Right? He's like, I look back to see Mother Summer arch her brow. Winter's head shifted, and I could see the gleam of light on yellow teeth. Her voice rasped. Unicorn. He's like, and I love this again. He's like, freaking weirdo, very bitty, but he's like, it's almost like she took pleasure in giving me that answer. Oh shit! Whack! Lights out. It's like always.
And the subtle scent of Elaine's perfume.
Right. Love it.
Yeah.
Grum.
So,
smack some less than sense into him.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He figures it out. Wait. And just as he's trying to bring up to cut through all the veils and the bullshit. Right. Sorry, too late.
I'm gonna say, for how many times he loses consciousness from these blows, like, he's got to have so much brain damage. Like,
right?
It's not just like, if you're knocked out for any period of time that's longer than like 30 seconds, you have brain damage. You have a concussion. Done. You this has been jostled around too much. The point that this is bad.
My coworkers are obsessed with fantasy football. It's all we ever freaking talk about, like, I don't know, whatever the fuck it is, like Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. It is nonstop fantasy football. So every week, our coworkers are passing around, like, hits that the guys got, and watching some of these footballers, like, I'm sorry, there's something wrong with them at this point. Like you see them get a hit, and then you're watching them walk off the stage. You're like, this is them the next day, and you're watching them, like, the very next day after they got this horrible blow on the field, and you're like, that person's not okay. They should not have been allowed back on the field. Like, they
and that's why there's so much stuff now with kids sports, and they're like, yo, concussions are a thing, people.
Seriously, though, it's insane, though. Like, it takes one hit, and you are done. Like,
yeah. Well, like you're saying, you look at
wrestlers that go
and
insane
things like
and
that
shit like that.
and stuff. Yeah, like, exactly right.
Well, I mean, as we'll see in future books, wizards get the tiniest bit of healing. The slowest of the slow, but faster than human range.
Little trickle.
And thank God, because, like, yeah, Harry should be like...
Or this boy needs it.
Yeah, really, though. Like, he's not okay.
But it's, again, the fairies keep coming along and kissing him on the forehead and making all his boobies go. So,
But you know what's funny, though, is that, like...
Let's relieve that pressure in your brain, okay?
Yeah.
You ever watch a show like Bones, or you watch, like, crime scene investigation, things like that, and they're always, like, examining the bones, or, like, a lot of, like, the History Channel has a lot of, like, we go back in time and, like, we, like, look at these bones and we, like, figure out their story, right? And they're always, like, just looking at this, we could tell, like, they, like, had scoliosis, or they had, like, this, or they died from that, or they, like, would have been hunched their whole life based. Like, it's like, yeah, like, I imagine, like, what's someone going to eventually, like, they turn Harry's skull into another home for Bonnie, and then eventually Harry's skull becomes another Bob.
Yeah.
And, like, they're like, what the fuck happened to this thing? It's been broken 37 times, magically healed, broken again. Like, this one spot has been...
This is the craziest scar tissue
That's
ever.
ooh. Now I want
like
a wizard archaeologist who can tell that it's been magically mended.
I'm just like the same one. Like, your cranium has been busted 4,000 times. Like, that's unreal. And we've said it before. Like it says in the books. Like, you use languages you don't know for your spells because after a while it decays. You try to keep things that don't have a lot of meaning to your psyche so it doesn't ruin you and blah blah blah. Right? And it's like Harry sees a lot more battle and a lot more magic than most wizards do because most of them are just writing their notes and living their lives, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, like the amount of head busting that Harry does, like they didn't need an archaeologist before this, but now just for Harry. This is a museum of just Harry's body because it got destroyed in life.
Right? Like, no kidding.
Are you a vampire, a unicorn, a wizard, a mermaid, a kraken, a ghoul, a troll, like whatever you are,
Dresden gets his own category now.
Yeah, like you've destroyed Harry's body in some way. Like all the monsters can come to the museum and be like, this is what my ancestors destroyed. This is what my ancestors. Yeah, like my great great grandfather broke that finger. My great great nephew broke that cranium. Like
repeatedly.
That's hilarious.
In the same year.
Yeah.
No shit, hey. Mm-hmm. So yeah, boom. Bye bye.
Good night, Harry. For our Patreon subscribers looking for something fun to do this Monday, October 31st, we will be streaming classic scary movies all evening. Starting from 6 p.m. MST, join us for Frankenstein, Dracula, and The Mummy. More details on our Patreon and Discord. Happy Halloween. And happy birthday, Harry. And Jim Butcher.
This concludes our episode 9.18, What Unicorn? Thank you for listening. You can find us online at freeflowrambling.com and McAnally's.ca. There we have links to our other podcasts, social media, and other fun tidbits. Please subscribe if you like what you're hearing, and please consider supporting us through Patreon to keep the magic alive and to see more content. We are Free Flow Rambling. Conjure by it at your own risk.